With DC and Warner Bros. In general, it always kind of feels like it's one step forward and two steps back, because every time we think we finally improved and like maybe this franchise is heading in a good direction, something comes out that makes it feel like we're just back to square one. And one of those things just happened, and that is that the current CW president, Brad Schwartz, has come out and said that the CW and Nexstar actually and surprisingly had nothing to do with the cancellation or decision to end Superman and Lois. Schwartz has said that Superman and Lois is ending with season 4 because DC or WB doesn't want the show to be around when Superman Legacy debuts next year, his direct quote being that they don't want a competing Superman product in the marketplace, which this is so stupid in my opinion. I feel like having more than one version of a character, if they're both good, can only be productive for your franchise. Like if I'm a Superman fan, I'm likely already interested in both projects, but say you're not a Superman fan. Say you go see Legacy and you're like, whoa, Superman is awesome. After seeing the film, you come out of it and you're just really excited to see more of the character now. You come out wanting to see more Superman. So you look up on your phone and you see that there is a Superman TV show airing on TV right now. Are you going to go, oh, well, that's competing with what I just watched, I'm not going to go near that show? No, there's no way you will. You're going to watch it because you're going to want more Superman content. So to constantly hear DC or Warner Bros. Or whoever it is saying that they don't want competing versions of these characters in the marketplace is ridiculous, because having more of a character that people love is never a bad thing. Now, 2022 and 2023 in general were a huge bloodbath for DC as a brand. Once it got announced that the new DCU was happening, we witnessed a lot of projects get cancelled or gotten rid of. Not all of these are on the DC brand or on James Gunn though, because like the Arrowverse shows, for example, so Gotham Knights, Batwoman, Stargirl, Legends of Tomorrow, even Flash, I should say more the CW shows rather than the Arrowverse shows, but these shows, so Gotham Knights, Batwoman, Stargirl, Legends of Tomorrow, and even Flash to a lesser degree, the decision to end those shows still seems to have come from Nexstar and CW deciding to shake up the channel going forward. Shows like Titans and Doom Patrol being cancelled over on Max seem to have been more related to David Zaslav's attempt to save money and really only go forward with kind of shows that are making considerable money for the studio. So all of this seems to not be overly related to James Gunn, Peter Safran, and their upcoming DC franchise. Batgirl kind of the same, where that was likely more of a Zaslav decision than anybody else. The future of the DCU, though, the one that had Henry Cavill returning as Superman, the one with a third Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman, among other things, these projects being scrapped do seem to have been more heavily lying on the shoulders of people like James Gunn than most of the other projects here. But Superman and Lois seems to kind of be closer to a James Gunn, David Zaslav decision in terms of it not being cost related, but DC property related. Now these are the kind of decisions that plagued DC for decades. A lot of the early 2000s animated shows were under what was called a bat embargo, where certain characters couldn't appear because they were being used in the movies. The early years of the Arrowverse saw things like this happen, where Superman was a no-go for years, Batman was a no-go for the entire run of the Arrowverse. Arrow Season 3 saw huge changes to their plans when DC told them that they couldn't have characters like Ted Kord or the Suicide Squad for their planned main villain that year, so they had to pivot to things like Ray Palmer stepping in instead of Kord, and Ra's al Ghul and the League becoming the villains instead of the Squad. Some of these things are actually really obvious. Ray, for example, his story in the first 9 or so episodes of Arrow Season 3 is filled with references to comic book things that are completely associated with Ted Kord's Blue Beetle and not really at all associated with Ray Palmer or the Atom. So yeah, things like that. Smallville also faced problems like this later in their run. The writers on the show were constantly trying to get characters like Bruce Wayne or Diana Prince, and we're just always told that that couldn't happen, which when you look at the later years of Smallville, it feels like the only major heroes the show was never able to bring on or use at all are Batman and Wonder Woman. And the reason for all of this is that DC and WB believe that it's counterintuitive or dangerous to their brand to have more than one version of a character at once, so sometimes they step in and they veto certain projects. But the problem with this is that they're incredibly hypocritical of themselves and stupid in how they go about it. We had Smallville airing the same time as Superman Returns. We currently have Robert Pattinson's Batman franchise presumably continuing while the DCU Batman shows up in The Brave and the Bold. So it feels like DC and WB just kind of stupidly pick and choose when something gets to continue and when something doesn't. Now it's totally possible that Brad Schwartz is just maybe making this up, using it as a cover to justify why he cancelled the show so that he doesn't get under fire when season 4 airs towards the end of this year, because we're still like 6 or 7 months out from when Superman and Lois season 4 is going to be airing. Now obviously I have no idea what the guy's like, but my feeling is that he isn't making this up, and the reason for that is because every CW show was cancelled or forcibly ended besides 4. And the 4 that were saved were because they were either the highest performing in a certain demographic or they had the highest overall audience views for the network. These were shows where All-American and All-American spin-off All-American Homecoming, which performed the best in the 18 to 49 demographic, and then you have Walker and Superman and Lois performing the best for the network in terms of their overall views. Now, All-American, All-American Homecoming, and Walker are already being talked about as potentially getting a renewal beyond their upcoming seasons. Superman and Lois is ending with its upcoming season, however, and Superman and Lois also received a serious budget cut going into this final season. Now, personally, with budget cuts, I don't see why it makes sense for CW or Nexstar to cancel Superman and Lois when it's performing as well as it is. Yes, Superman and Lois has kind of a chunky budget, but they renewed the other 3 shows that are performing around the same ballpark. I think it's a bit weird to cancel Superman and Lois when it is like right there beside them. I've seen a lot of people come out in defense of James Gunn because Gunn said a while ago that he likes Superman and Lois and sees no reason why the show couldn't continue for a few more seasons. I don't know, I think it's very possible he maybe said that he'd prefer it for live action if maybe Superman Legacy was the only Superman project we were seeing, because outside of the Batman universe and Joker 2 this year, the only live action DC projects that we know for sure happening in the future, and I mean like definitively happening, are the DCU projects. Gunn also made that comment in his DCU announcement video last year that DC were over that era of letting anybody make the projects they wanted, that these characters and these IPs were just not going to be given out to anyone anymore, so we could definitely hear some interesting things in the future surrounding this, but I don't know, I think it's just really frustrating in general because this is the kind of thing that DC was doing for years, and it was something that everybody always kind of pointed to and said this was a stupid rule. Like, I remember back when Arrow was airing and this thing kept happening where we'd be like, why did this character never show up again? We'd find out it was because DC told them that they had to remove the character, and it was always just like, this is so stupid. Why? Nobody is stupid enough to believe that these characters can't coexist, that you can't have multiple versions of the characters at once. It's I don't know, it's something that it's a stupid rule and DC needs to get over it, and to see them going back to something like this is just really disheartening as a fan, and something that I hope they realize is just extremely counterintuitive and disrespectful to their fan base as well. I actually have a DCU video coming out that I want to make next week where I kind of just want to talk about my excitement for the DCU, but also that based on certain decisions WB and DC are making, I'm a little apprehensive about the DCU. But yeah, that's just kind of... I love Superman and Lois. It's one of the best DC shows of all time, I think. Season 1 is a perfect season, and Season 3 is some of the most adult, like, comic book material content we've ever gotten in terms of the subject matter it deals with. But yeah, how do you feel about all of this with Superman and Lois? Do you think there's some truth to this? Are you annoyed over the whole thing? And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing and all of that, and I hope you have a fantastic day.